Hold on. You mean to tell me MLB is reportedly trying to get the Tampa Bay Rays owner to sell? Why not do the same with the White Sox, Rob Manfred?
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, The Athletic has a report out that MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred and other owners are pressuring Tampa Bay Rays owner Stu Sternberg to sell the team. I want to discuss why isn't MLB doing the same with Jerry Reinsdorf given the franchise's current sad state and a billionaire wanting to buy the team. Then, the White Sox made a good outfield depth signing by adding Travis Jankowski after he elected free agency after not making the Cubs. And finally, another glaring issue that could doom the White Sox to flirt with another historic losing season was on display in yesterday's spring training tie. Okay, so The Athletic has been really good lately in getting the scoops on ownership drama in MLB. Although they, last October, they were kind of used as a trial balloon by Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf to get, folks scared into thinking he would sell the team to Dave Stewart, given his ties to the Nashville expansion efforts, in hopes of, getting public money to build a new stadium on the vacant land in the South Loop known as the 78. But John Greenberg did a great job with his recent story about Justin Ishbia giving up his pursuit of buying the Minnesota Twins and instead increasing his minority shares in the White Sox with the hope of one day purchasing majority control of the team. Now the Athletics' Evan Drellich has another MLB ownership coup, and that is Rays owner Stu Sternberg is being pressured by MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred and other owners to sell. The drama centers around, you guessed it, a new stadium in Tampa. Sternberg is in a feud with local officials after he claims they dragged their feet to vote on the public money portion that Pinellas County and St. Pete would kick in, even though the vote was delayed by a hurricane. He's claiming now that the cost of building the stadium is going up, and he just doesn't want to cover the overhead because he's willing to split the cost of a potential new stadium to be constructed in St. Petersburg, Florida. Maybe he just doesn't want to build in St. Petersburg after all. Maybe they're just getting cold feet because it sounds like they're going to pull out of this deal that they had with the county. But either way, it's a mess, and it sounds like Sternberg is sort of making a heel turn, to use the professional wrestling vernacular there. An owner trying to get public money to build a new stadium. An owner who, while has actually been one of the model owners, at least for small market teams, still cries poverty. And an owner who once floated the idea of moving to another market. Well, at least half the time. Does this sound familiar to you? This sounds exactly like Jerry Reinsdorf. But MLB wants to run out Sternberg, yet they have no problem with Jerry owning the team for as long as he wants, even though he owns it really, really bad compared to Sternberg, who is probably one of the best owners in baseball. But I guess if you share a market, it's fine. You're kind of like little brother to the Cubs. We don't care. Little brother, you want to scream, we'll just ignore you. But if you have the market all to yourself, especially where folks go to retire, then it's a problem. Although this article also may calm some fears of the Sox ever leaving Chicago, at least in the next couple of years. So according to Drellich, and this is out, this has been out for a little bit, but I finally had a hole in the schedule for me to actually address this. According to Drellich, here's why MLB is furious with Sternberg. The Rays could probably sell for a higher dollar value where potential buyers are allowed to relocate the team, but MLB does not want the Rays to move out of the overall market, believing it is still viable. Nor does the league want to give up a potential expansion city like Nashville or Portland, Oregon, or Salt Lake City. Whether to allow relocation is ultimately up to MLB and the other owners, not Sternberg. So with discussions not yet meeting Sternberg's target price, he doesn't appear to have a great incentive to act quickly. Revenue sharing in the team's balance sheet today might be more appealing than reducing his asking price or taking on the expense of new construction in St. Pete. But Manfred and other owners appear out of patience. Sternberg, a few years ago, pushed a plan for a team to split the season between two countries, in the U.S. and Florida, and in Montreal and in Canada, which Manfred eventually nixed. Today, large market clubs that pay the most into revenue sharing are not happy, and at least some of the small market teams are annoyed too. Quote, you're San Diego, you're Milwaukee, you work your butt off. end quote, said one person briefed on the ownership level discussions. To an extent, the Rays are keeping the owners from the windfall of an expansion fee. Manfred wants the league to have chosen 2 cities for new teams before his planned retirement in 2029. But he has also long said that the process would wait until the Rays situation is solved. The Rays aren't definitely the only holdup, though. Some owners might be hesitant to expand until the A's are settled in Las Vegas, or the league has a plan for the Miami Marlins, who are struggling to draw. So once again, I always put the threat at the Sox leaving Chicago only as a dark cloud looming, but a storm that could probably pass us by. Probably not going to hit Chicago, because why would MLB want to take away a potential sweetheart deal for 2 expansion cities? Why would they want to basically remove a chair of this musical chairs before they have to? The music doesn't need to stop right now. You don't want to take out the competition that you want for potential basically sweetheart deals for a stadium, for a new team, whether it's in Salt Lake, whether it's in Portland, or whether it's in Nashville. I think Nashville is obviously going to get an expansion team just because of how it's growing, and it is a tourist city. And you kind of see Major League Baseball embracing tourist city, because just because the local team isn't going to be totally supported locally, it could if it's a winner. You could still draw, because people are going to be like, hey, I'll go to Las Vegas, check out the White Sox play the A's. I'll take a trip out there. I'll go to Nashville, hang out in Nashville, and while I'm there, go see the White Sox, for example. It's the same thing with the Rays. They want the Rays to be viable, even though it is, that area is basically a retirement area. Basically all Florida. Yes, it's getting a little bit younger. I know there's different demographics, but still at the end of the day, it's heaven's waiting room. So that's kind of why they want to at least still have a team in Tampa. Plus, you got spring training baseball there. Baseball's kind of big in Florida, so it can't hurt to have 2 teams in Florida. And that's why you just don't want to have Tampa flirting with relocation either, because you just don't want to stop the music yet. Now, the loser in the figurative musical chairs, that's the only reason why I still think the storm could be losing. The storm could be looming. Let's say it's Nashville and Utah. Maybe Portland still wants to get a major league team. Then you have that issue of a potential relocation. But right now, this article does point out you don't really need to have a ton of fear of the White Sox leaving Chicago, even if they can't get the new ballpark on the 78. But still, this speaks to pressure in owner, where my assumption is MLB wants baseball in Tampa because of their retiree factor, because otherwise Tampa, they don't draw ever. At least, the Sox have drawn in the past. Tampa never draws. And you could say, and maybe the working theory is Tropicana Field is a terrible ballpark environment. Right now, obviously, because the roof got torn off by that hurricane that delayed the vote that has Sternberg so mad. Heaven forbid they, delay a vote because of a natural disaster. #sarcasm. But, when it comes to also what type of town Tampa is, and I've visited Tampa many times. I had to go there for a 9 to 5 and a previous 9 to 5 life plenty of times. It's a Buccaneers and Lightning town. And even then, to become a Lightning town, the Lightning had to win a couple Stanley Cups. It's more, again, tourism, beach, that type of stuff. But I get it. It still makes sense to have professional baseball, spring training state, as I said. You get a lot of relocators and retirees who might be tempted to buy some tickets to check out when their team comes to town. So I get it. But, and maybe the better facility would draw fans, but still, it's not like Tampa's been this hotbed for baseball. It's always struggled to draw. But why are they, putting the screws to Sternberg? This is just my hypothesis. He doesn't share the market with anybody else. Where Jerry, he gets to skate by because, he shares Chicago with the Cubs. You still got the Cubs. That's what MLB could say. Well, Cubs are playing all right. Even though Jerry, under his ownership, they've gone from winning a World Series in 2005 to 19 years later, having the worst record of all time in the modern era. That's how bad Jerry has been as an owner. And think about it. Jacob Fisher, he was never forced to sell. There's never, Rob Manfred and other owners calling him and being like, dude, we got to stay in Oakland. It's the Bay Area. Why are you not getting this done? You should sell. You should sell. No, because the Bay Area also had the Giants. So there's alternative teams. So no need to, put Fisher and Reinsdorf, don't hold them accountable. But when it comes to Sternberg, you got Tampa all yourself. Get it done. Get the stadium done. Plus, Jerry and, well, I think the A's were getting revenue share, but Jerry, he's not drawing from MLB's revenue share. In fact, he's a payer. Where the Rays, they're leeching off the system, as Drellich wrote. So that's why Jerry probably gets a pass, because he's a revenue share payer. Where Sternberg, he keeps getting a lot of his revenue from revenue sharing. But the other thing is why you want to be like, why are you not pressuring Jerry to sell? Because he's keeping two billionaire brothers from maybe owning the team better. He's keeping them out. Brothers, the Ishbia brothers, who might be able to help MLB navigate the RSN dying economic model. However, baseball, they're so backwards in their thinking. Maybe the owners don't want the Ishbias owning the team, since owners were so resistant to Steve Cohen buying the Mets in the first place. And Justin and Matt's combined worth, I believe, would rank them as the second richest owners. So I don't think maybe they want him in. But in terms of favorability, I did reach out to the hosts of Locked On Rays to get an idea of just how despised or how loved Sternberg is in Tampa, to see if there's any parallel too, because, as we know, we loathe Jerry Reinsdorf as Chicago White Sox fans. Here's what co-host Ulysses Sombrano wrote me. Stu has always had his way of making the fandom not be his biggest fan. Remember split city with Montreal, multiple stadium deals falling through, like the one by the Bay, Yorber, etc., not spending significant money. However, there was always the argument that he knew how to hire well, letting the front office do their own thing and not meddle, and that made the good results on the field show up. Everyone likes winning. After Hurricane Milton, he fully turned himself against the fandom by stating the 49 delays of the bond vote, which were originally delayed because of the same hurricane to vote on other pertinent issues, were the result of the cost overruns increased by 100, 200 million without proof. They said they, quote, felt betrayed by the city and county. So in the end, the bonds were passed, meaning the city and county have now committed $600 million to $1.2 billion stadium. And he's saying it's not enough now. There are people who always doubted this deal going through anyway, because they're building in the same spot as the Trop, doubting that attendance wouldn't sink after the freshness wore off. He has until March 31st to show the Rays have checked their boxes on their end so the project can commence. An owner trying to squeeze the public for more money? I guess it's okay for Jerry, because he only vaguely, maybe sort of hinted at a move to Nashville. And at least he sat down with the Nashville mayor to at least plead the case for an expansion franchise in Nashville. He doesn't have to sell then if you do that. But if you don't come up with the commitment to build a stadium like Jacob Fisher did, now we gotta get Sternberg out of the ownership, fraternity. Okay. Even though, again, he's been a model owner in terms of he knows how to hire the right people. He has had successful franchises. He has won despite, barely drawing flies. But it just speaks to how you got three owners. One of them can actually run the franchise well, but he gets the pressure because he might possibly interfere with expansion. And he's possibly going to interfere with the economic model. While the two others, Jerry and Fisher, they get a pass because they don't mess with the model. And Fisher, he might put a team in Las Vegas. And who cares if he left behind a bigger market, because, hey, the Giants are still there. And Jerry, I guess he's just the godfather of the owners. He can do whatever he wants because, hey, he's Jerry. Oh, here's an interesting twist of irony. Drellich listed the potential interested buyers for the Rays, and one of them might be familiar to some of the old school Sox fans. One of the groups interested in buying the Rays is the family of Edward DeBartolo Jr., which has roots in Tampa. Three people briefed on the discussion said members of the DeBartolo family own the San Francisco 49ers, although Edward Jr. is no longer involved with that team. Former New York Yankees minority owner Joe Malloy is involved in the DeBartolo effort as well, but does not carry the same financial weight as DeBartolo. The people briefed on the team's discussion also said Tampa Bay businessman Dan Doyle Jr., who reportedly pulled out of a previous process to buy the Rays in 2023, is part of another ownership group with recent interest. MLB and the 49ers declined comment. Doyle and Malloy could not immediately be reached for comment. Quote, I'm interested to read about what industry partners have told you about our franchise and its future, end quote, Sternberg said when reached for comment this Sunday. So it would just be nice if the commissioner acted in the best interest of baseball like the job used to be, and force out any owner who's not willing to commit to being competitive or threatens to blow up stadium deals because they think they can squeeze hardworking taxpayers for more money. Instead, the commission, he now reports to the owner and solely to the owners. So that means if 29 other owners want the dude out, he'll do their bidding, even if the majority of them should sell as well. But remember, the only qualification to be an owner is you have to be rich and not threaten the big picture. Well, the outfield is banged up, but the Cubs passing on Travis Jankowski allowed the Sox to pick up a good depth piece that I'll discuss after the break on Locked On White Sox. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, say it with me. Get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So I like Travis Jankowski signing with the White Sox for a couple of reasons. One, it's another good veteran depth signing. Two, he catches pretty much everything hit his way. Sort of like how he robbed Andrew Vaughn last August of that walk-off home run and one of the greatest catches in Sox Park history. That's one of the three greatest snags of all time that you'll ever see in right field history, by the way. It's three. It's up there. It's in the top five for sure. While he isn't a power left-handed bat, he's at least a better left-handed option off the bench than, say, Joey Gallo, who's just all or nothing. And for those griping that Jankowski couldn't make the Cubs, so why should we be happy about him signing with the White Sox now? The Cubs outfield is stacked. I mean, Seiya Suzuki has to DH just to get at bats. I mean, they got plenty of options. He was signed for his depth. And the White Sox, they also need depth. So take a major league depth option any chance you can get. And the Sox outfield has been ravaged by injuries. Andrew Benintendi, Austin Slater, they're likely going to start the season on the IL. And since GM Chris Getz didn't exactly give ringing endorsements in the offseason to Dominic Fletcher and Oscar Colas, and clearly doesn't have the money to go out and sign Alex Verdugo because he said nobody on the free agent market, and I talked about it on last week's show, that no one made sense, even though Alex Verdugo, still there, 29. Clearly they don't have, the money to sign somebody on a major league contract. Jankowski suddenly being available was a good pounce to get more depth. And especially since it means you don't have to play Andrew Benintendi anymore in left field in tight games. Because now you have Jankowski and Michael A. Taylor on the bench to basically catch everything. And they also have way better arms. I'm not saying Jankowski has a gun, but it's way better than Andrew Benintendi's rainbow arm. I mean, seriously, when he throws balls to home plate, when he tries to, throw it, it's got so much arc on it. I swear two of everything's going to come down. Okay, you're going to find a pot of gold at the end of that throw. Plus, I like that you're tapping into the ties of manager Will Venable, and I'd rather tap into his network than Pedro Grifol's network, like they did last season, and Chris Getz's network of just signing a bunch of former Kansas City Royals, because that clearly helps you lose 121 games. When it comes to Jankowski, he is coming off a bad year at the plate. A 200, 266, 242 slash line with a 48 WRC plus and a minus 0.3 F4 in 2024 in 104 games. Ow. That's way down, too, compared to in 2023 when he helped the Texas Rangers win a World Series with a 263, 357, 332 slash line, a 97 WRC plus, and a 1.2 F4. He also fits, though, their preferred trait of on-base percentage over 300. He does have a career 319 OBP, and, the White Sox are looking for more and more guys. Obviously, you want them to be in that 350 range. That's the good range. But still, if you can get guys over 300, that's kind of what they've been looking for this offseason. Although last year felt like an anomaly because he's got a career 10.1% walk rate, but he was at 5.8% last year. So it just showed you kind of how he had a bunch of struggles at the plate. Also in 2022 and 2023, his strikeout rate was around 15%, both seasons. It ballooned to 21.3. His career pitch hit numbers, too, they're not the greatest either. 106 plate appearances, and he has a career 211 average with a 538 OPS. And he also has just no pop in that bat. 11 career home runs. But he's still a professional baseball player based on the numbers. I mean, that's still replacement level. It's not ideal, but he's a darn good defender. He's basically going to catch everything, just like Michael A. Taylor. That's the only reason why I don't mind Michael A. Taylor either. At least they catch everything. And as we saw last year, catching the ball in the outfield is kind of hard. He just has 7 career errors since debuting in 2015. He has a career 9 defensive runs saved and 6 outs above average in left field. 8 and 14 in that department in center, 13 and 12 in right. And considering the Sox lost a lot of extra games last year, those extra games, because they were going to lose 100 games last year. That was definitely clear. Just like they're probably going to lose 100 games again this year. What puts you towards that historically awful is losing those extra games on, say, those bloop hits that you just don't have guys in the outfield with the range to get to those balls. And as we've seen, Jankowski, he's got excellent range to catch a lot of stuff hit his way. Just like Michael A. Taylor. You can put those guys out late in the game if you've got that lead, because again, the bullpen blew 37 saves last year. They blew, that again gets you to historically awful. If you get some guys that have better range, you've got a chance of maybe protecting those leads a little bit more. And I mean, we saw it with one of the most amazing catches when Will Venable recommended to Bruce Bochy put Jankowski in at left as a late game defensive replacement last August against the Sox. And what does he do? Literally robs the Sox of what could have been the Sox ending up with 42 wins and tying the 62 Mets for this worst record rather than replacing them. I mean, that one definitely, that was going to be a walk-off. And that should have totaled up then to the White Sox winning 42 games. So then at least you've got company as the worst team ever. You just joined the 62 Mets. But no, you are the worst team ever. And if you hear, if you've got the MLB.TV package and you listen to spring training games right now, that's all the opposing audience. I mean, the opposing radio or television call, because that's usually what you're getting, because even though the White Sox own their own television network, they're not broadcasting their spring training games for some crazy reason. So you get a lot of these out-of-town broadcasts. That's all they talk about. Oh, the White Sox, they lost 121 games, a record 121 games. They were the worst team ever. They do mention the brighter future, but still. I wrote on SouthsideShowdown.com, even though it was for the opponent, it's probably the third best catch you'll ever see in whatever they're calling White Sox Park these days. I mean, I put number one. You got to put Dwayne Wise's Mark Burley preserving the perfect game catch. I mean, that's number one because it, kept history going. Perfect games rarely happen. And Dwayne Wise making that amazing catch allowed Mark Burley to achieve perfection and to achieve history. And then Brian Anderson's diving catch in game 163 in the 2008 blackout game to clinch the AL Central and finally vanquish the Twins in a race for the AL Central. That's number two, in my opinion. So you got to go Wise, Anderson, then Jankowski. I mean, I know he played for the Rangers, but that was go gadget arm right there. Jankowski initially signed a minor league deal with the Cubs in the offseason with a non-roster invite. He hit 231, he slashed 231, 373, 231 with an OPS of 606 in spring training. He was left off the roster that went to Japan to open the season against the Dodgers. So he elected free agency and he signed with the Sox. And thankfully he was available because while I love Dominic Fletcher's glove, he still takes some, how shall I put it, interesting lines to the ball. But if Getz isn't thrilled with him or Colas, what should make any of us throw with them, covering the depth in the outfield while Benintendi and Slater start the year on the IL? So at least you're getting a professional baseball player coming off the bench. And as I've said, if there's no viable prospect option immediately ready, I'm fine with getting veterans to cover. I'm fine with it. I think Dominic Fletcher is who he is. Same with Oscar Colas. And while I still say free Oscar, he's probably better suited, at least if he's still with the Sox, to be, his depth role is probably better suited to be that in-season call-up because he's one of the few options that you have left, kind of like he was last year. He'll get you through, he'll get you through a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks. But if you need Oscar Colas for the first month, which could be, those oblique injuries that Austin Slater have, they're tricky. They're hard to come back from. And Andrew Benintendi can say, yeah, I can wrap my hand around the bat, but there's no need to, he was terrible in 2023 with a hand injury. Why rush him back? Have him heal, have him get some at-bats in extended spring training, have him go to Charlotte, take your time with him. So since Jankowski became available, I'm glad the White Sox went with the better available option. Well, the Sox ended up with a 1-1 tie against the Los Angeles Angels yesterday. However, it should have been an easy win for the Sox with the offense producing 11 hits. A troubling trend was on display once again that helped cause the 2024 season being historically awful, and I want to discuss how the Sox bats have to get better with runners in scoring position if there's ever a hope of even reaching the 61 win projection, and that's next on Locked On White Sox. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keeping you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shell variety. It's a perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. And my wife and I were trying to eat more heart healthy. I was munching on some of these babies recently. Told my wife, give them a try. She loved them. I like the roasted and salted flavor and the honey roasted flavor too, since it has the perfect blend of roasted and salted, so you don't feel thirsty after eating a handful. And it's a great quick snack too. And with the no shell options, I don't have to clean them up around my desk. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options, hey, they're still a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode and recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Well, the pitching was really good in yesterday's 1-1 spring training tie because, yes, you can have ties in spring training. Most of the umpires don't want to stick around after 9 innings. Mike Clevenger pitched another clean inning to make his case to be in the bullpen. I think I'm going to be sick after saying that. But hey, I've said, even on yesterday's show with Courtney Finicum, we can't take away that he has pitched, well in 2 innings, and he did have a good 2023 season. But what people have to start remembering is he was available to the market 3 times. Nobody wants him. Character issues, blah, 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 blah. Justin Dunn actually started the game and tossed 3 innings. And since he's, has started in the past, it makes me wonder if they're going to keep him and stretch him out in Charlotte as a depth option because he's on that minor league deal with an invite to camp. Peyton Polite did give up the only run in the game, and it ended in a 1-1 tie. However, the White Sox should have actually won the game with how many hits the offense was producing. And the only reason why I'm making light of this is, with how that it was such a major issue last year in terms of getting, scoring runs and hitting with runners in scoring position. You saw how a terrible offense can be a major contribution towards losing an historic amount of games. And as everydayers might recall, I've pointed out many times, 505 runs is what equals historic losses. So if you want to avoid another historically awful season, something I'd like to see them avoid, I hope you would too, they got to score more runs. And if the trend of being awful with runner and scoring positions continues into the season, there could be a realistic flirtation with breaking the 1916 Philadelphia A's worst winning percentage in the modern era. That still could be in play because remember, everybody that says, I can't get any worse. Yes, there's still one more awful record for this team to break. But despite getting 11 hits and 6 walks against an Angels pitching staff that looked shaky throughout the day, the Sox went 1 for 16 with runners in scoring position. I'll repeat, 1 for 16 with runners in scoring position. And since the Sox have no margin for error, scoring 1 run in a game is likely not going to hold up well. I mean, this team has no margin for error. And the offense has to produce then more timely hits. They've got to stack up more runs because, again, the pitching staff just doesn't have that strikeout stuff right now. They're going to rely on weak contact and funky deliveries, as I've talked about in other episodes. And, timely hits too. That was another area where variance just went against the White Sox last season. They just could rarely find holes in the defense once a runner was in prime position to get home. I mean, that did also impact. It seemed like every time they hit a ball, guy would make amazing catch. It just would go right at the defender, that type of stuff. And think about it. The Sox were dead last in OPS with runners in scoring position last season. 604 was the number 2. They had just 28 home runs with RISP, find out what it means to me, and 338 RBIs with runners in scoring position. That's just not going to get it done. Also, dead last in slug with 330. And it was not like the Sox were running a lineup yesterday full of minor leaguers and guys with no hope of making the roster. They had potential regulars out there. Luis Robert Jr., Miguel Vargas, Andrew Vaughn, Josh Rojas. They all played. Robert Jr. scored the only run on a Vaughn hit. Miguel Vargas, he had 2 hits. Rojas, he was 2 for 4, and yet just 1 run. So the Sox have to avoid having games like this with regularity. They have to, because they had games like this with regularity last year. They've got to avoid that if they have any hope of just being run-of-the-mill bad. And run-of-the-mill bad is progress. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast with hosts Dominic Martino and Matthew on A. MLB fantasy draft season is here. Be the most informed fan and set yourself up for a league win. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with a discussion of, while it might be a good idea to want to trade Luis Robert Jr. before opening day, there's going to be one major hangup. There might not be a trade partner out there right now. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding MLB trying to force out the Rays owner, but not Jerry, Travis Jankowski signing with the team, and stranding runners yesterday being another sign of a possibly historically awful season if it does not get cleaned up. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.